Hello, and welcome to a video I've never made before because I am not usually a new release girly because disposable income is a thing that exists and has to be budgeted for. And when I was getting into reading, there's a certain amount of foundation laying you need to do. And I think I've now reached a point of foundation laying where authors that I have read and really enjoyed, that I've read quite a bit of their work, are releasing new books. So I feel like I'm at a point where I now actually have an amount of new authors that are releasing new books that I am interested in reading. And 2025 is a stacked year so far. I've made this list and there are already so many books and there'll be more released. I made a similar list last year and I added to it as the year went along. And I think I'm already at the same amount of books that I had at the end of 2024 at the start of 2025. It's really crazy. Honestly, if Martin and Rothfuss released a book in 2025, it would be the biggest year in fantasy publishing possibly ever. Everyone is publishing a book in 2025 and for fantasy, and then there's a lot of new translations, a lot of second books coming out from authors that I'm also very interested in. Less of those. This is predominantly a fantasy list, purely because I think there's the most news about that currently. I tend to struggle finding information about literary fiction in the sense of, apart from if it's a very particular post or the author has posted about it and I saw it at the time, that it very easily goes under my radar. Whereas fantasy, finger on the pulse. If you do enjoy this video, please do like, please do subscribe. Essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through the books that I am anticipating. These are the books that I want to read. So there will not be, this is not an all-encompassing list. If there is an author that I have not read, that I don't have, it's the fifth book. Pierce Brown, for instance. I've never read Red Rising, so don't expect the new Pierce Brown book to be on here. Essentially, I'm going to go through in chronological order throughout the year with the release dates that I have seen. Now, these will be Canadian dates. They could vary America and England, etc. Rest of the world. And then there's four at the end that don't have dates currently. So I'm just going to bookend the video with those. They are some of probably the biggest releases, but you know, what are you going to do? We don't have the date. So, if you do enjoy, please do like, please do subscribe. I can now say, if you want to join the channel and spend money on absolutely nothing to support me, then feel free. But for real, let's get into it. The last thing to kind of say is that the way that I approach new releases as someone who reviews books and then as a result can request copies is that I create this list so then I can go on NetGalley and I request the books as they become available. And then when I read them, it's just a really nice way to be able to read the books before they come out, to then know if I love them, to buy them. So I think it's always a big thing. And I always try to be very transparent. I may read an arc and be like, that was good. It does not necessarily mean that I am spending my money on it or that I would spend my money on it. And that comes down to individuals' situations. So all of these and everything I review in terms of when I say I've got an arc, I try to leave it until I have a physical copy, or I'm saying I'm not going to buy a physical copy. Because I think that says so much more than any star system ever could, is the fact that I have read this book now, and I've bought a hardback at the ludicrous prices that Canadian hardbacks are. That is the biggest endorsement that I can possibly give. And so new releases to me come down to buy immediately in hardback because I loved it, wait till a paperback comes out, or leave it to the ether. Nevertheless, The first one on this list is by an author that I have not read before. It is an author that I've heard of before and have been interested in reading their work, but have never actually tried. But I heard this from Daniel Green's his book list of 2025 releases, and immediately I was just like, that sounds very, very interesting. And that's Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor, who I'm sure people have heard of, but I imagine some people may be in the same as me as not having read them. As far as I'm aware, Okorafor does a lot of Afrofuturism, and this falls within that from the looks of it. So to give you a description, it says, life has thrown Zerlu some curveballs over the years, but when she suddenly dropped from her university job and her latest novel is rejected, all in the middle of her sister's wedding, her life is upended. Disabled, unemployed, and from a nosy, high-achieving, judgmental family, she's not sure what comes next. In her hotel room that night, she takes the risk that will define her life. She decides to write a book very unlike her others. A science fiction drama about androids and AI after the extinction of humanity, and everything changes. What follows is a tale of love and loss, fame and infamy, of extraordinary events in one world and another. And as Zerlu's life evolves, the lines between fiction and reality begin to blur, because sometimes a story really does have the power to reshape the world. So, bizarre kind of... To me, it sounds like literary sci-fi. It's just an engrossing idea. And the kind of blurring between storytelling and reality, that kind of meta aspect to the story, really has me intrigued. I am looking forward to reading this. That's book one, and it comes out, as far as I'm aware, January 14th, so very early January release. If I was going to read this as an arc, I would try to read it in December. Nevertheless, that's book one. Book two is one that I don't think a lot of people would have been interested in until a certain Nobel Prize ceremony or announcement. Is that Han Kang won the Nobel Prize of Literature. I wouldn't say Nobel Peace Prize. Nobel Prize for Literature. If anyone doesn't know, I love Han Kang's work. I've read Human Acts, The Vegetarian, and Greek Lessons. I wrote my dissertation partially on Han Kang. And the only one I haven't read so far that's been published and translated into English is The White Book, which I own, I just haven't read yet. And it's funny because I love Han Kang's writing. I read every book that comes out from her, even though I have never given one of her books 5 stars. I've given them between 3 and 4 for every single one. I think The Vegetarian and Human Acts both have 4.25. But she's one of the most fascinating authors. Every single one of her works evokes something, it provokes as well. And I always find them extremely interesting to read. So We Do Not Part is her new book translated into English. That also comes out in January. It comes out the 21st, I believe. And so this has already been translated into, I think, French and maybe some different languages. So that has, like, Goodreads already has about 900 ratings. This one says that Han Kang's most revelatory book since The Vegetarian, We Do Not Part, tells the story of a friendship between 2 women while powerfully reckoning with a hidden chapter of Korean history. So that very much, to me, blurs the lines between The Vegetarian and Human Acts, because The Vegetarian is about kind of the imposition of patriarchal forces on women's choices, and it deals with societal positioning and gender roles. Mixed with Human Acts is a story of a real life student uprising in Korea that was violently put down, and it is this story of one character, a ghost trying to find their body, a lot of really dark things in that, and it's told through a variety of persons, it's told through shifting perspectives, and it's a very jarring, dark, fantastic read. So immediately that seems to draw those two together. Now, do I know how to pronounce all of these names? No, I should have looked that up beforehand, so that makes this difficult. And so it finishes with blurring the boundaries between dream and reality. We Do Not Part powerfully illuminates a forgotten chapter in Korean history, buried for decades, bringing to light the lost voices of the past to save them from oblivion. Both a hymn to an enduring friendship and an argument for remembering. It is a story of profound love in the face of unspeakable violence, and a celebration of life, however fragile it might be. So that very much to me does scream of very much the blurring of lines between all of her books to date that I've read. Um, so that really is interesting. I would be that to me. I've already got that request on NetGalley and it has been approved, so that's going to be read no matter what. Um, and I'm very happy about that because Han Kang is just she is one of those authors that just has to be read, in my opinion. Closing out January is the kind of conclusion to a novella duology that I started reading in 2024, In the Shadow of the Fall by Tobi Odungiran. And yeah, so essentially the second book in that novella series comes out at the Font of Creation. So I really enjoyed the first novella. I think I gave it 4 stars. It was very solid. And so I want to finish that duology because it's always good to celebrate like a new up and coming voice, and I've read some of Ogundiran's work in short story collections and everything, but this is his first kind of solo project in a sense that I've seen, apart from his short story collection Jackal Jackal, which I also want to read, but you know, I think having this, now that I've read the first one of this, it's nice to have it come together and finish off. So I can't really say too much about it because it's the conclusion, so it's going to spoil the first half if I told you. So what I'm going to do is instead read the pitch for the first book because I think that most people aren't going to be aware of the first book anyway. So I'm going to read that, which is: a cosmic war reignites, and the fate of the Orisha lie in the hands of an untried acolyte in the first entry of a new epic fantasy novella duology, hence why we're reading the second. Ashake is an acolyte in the temple of Ifa, yearning for the day she is made a priest and sent out into the world to serve the Orisha. But of all the acolytes, she is the only one the Orisha refuse to speak to. For years she has watched from the sidelines as peer after peer passes her by and ascends to full priesthood. For years she has watched from the sidelines as peer after peer passes her by and ascends to full priesthood. Desperate, Ashake attempts to summon and trap an Orisha, any Orisha. Instead, she experiences a vision so terrible it draws the attention of a powerful enemy sect and thrusts Ashake into the centre of a centuries-old war that will shatter the very foundations of her world. That very much is the setup of the first book, and my main takeaway from the first book is that I liked how it kept me balanced between these two sides, where going into the second book, I am unsure of which side I'm meant to fully believe. And I think that's the best way for it to go for you, is that there is part of the novella that feels like it's going to go down a predictable route, and instead it levels out where it leaves an element of mystery, this feeling of unease, which wants you to go back and know for the character, because you are invested in that central character. And so when you've got this question of their safety, their knowledge, and what they're going to do, that's what draws you back. And so I thought it was really solid writing, really interesting world building, magic system, etc., and compelling cliffhanger. Not even a cliffhanger per se, but a compelling drop off point to pick it back up. So The Font of Creation is also on my list. Starting into February, the only February book actually I have on my list is Love in Exile by Shon Faye. So Shon Faye wrote the transgender issue, which I also read an arc for, and that was a fantastic non-fiction book around transgender lives, the abuse they face, the beauty of it, the overwhelming systemic injustice towards them. And it's also very much based in a British experience. So for me, I connected more with that, with having friends who are trans and from England and everything, reading stories that I knew about or had heard about and learning more quantifiable facts and analysis around a feeling you have when you live in that place, that was powerful and was necessary and allows you to speak about it in a much more detailed fashion yourself and be able to really go at the transphobes, essentially, which we all need. The new book Shon Faye's released is Love in Exile, which is, once again, I enjoy the transgender issue so much, in the sense of I appreciated the story, the book, that I want to read whatever Shon Faye releases next. And so it appears that she's writing a kind of non-fiction, more of a memoir. And so the description for this is, Shon Faye grew up quietly obsessed with the feeling that love was not for her. Not just romantic love, the secret fear of her own unworthiness penetrated every aspect and corner of her life. It was a fear that would erupt in destructive, counterfeit versions of the real love she craved, addictions and short-lived romances that were either euphoric and fantastical, or excruciatingly painful and unhinged, often both. Faye's experience of the world as a trans woman who grew up visibly queer exacerbated her fears. But as she confronted her damaging ideas about love and lovelessness, she came to realise that this sense of exclusion is symptomatic of a much larger problem in our culture. Love, she argues, is as much a collective question as a personal one, yet our collective ideals of love have developed in a society which is itself profoundly sick and loveless, in which consumer capitalism sells us ever new, engrossing fantasies becoming more loved or lovable. In this highly politicised terrain, boundaries are purposely drawn to keep some in and to keep others out. Those who exist outside of them are ignored, denigrated, exiled. In Love in Exile, Shon Faye shows love is much greater than the narrow ideals we have been taught to crave so desperately that we are willing to bend and break ourselves to fit them. Wise, funny, unsparing, and suffused with a radical clarity, this is a book of and for our times, for seeing and knowing love, in whatever form it takes, is the meaning of life itself. That sounds like a banger. I am here for it. To me, that sounds like, oh, I'm going to enjoy that. So, Love in Exile is definitely on my list. Now, on the same day, the 4th of March, 3 bangers pop up. Same day. Crazy. So, everyone put in their calendar for March 4th and all pray for my bank account, because it is going to hurt. The first is The River Has Roots by Amal El-Mohtar, which, if you are not aware, is half of the author team that put together This Is How You Lose the Time War. One of my favourite books. Love it. And so this is her actual first solo project getting released, I believe. Like full length. I believe there's, like, as always, like, short stories I've read of her in different collections, but this is the first solo project, name on book kind of vibe. This, I have a feeling, because of This Is How You Lose the Time War, is going to have a big push. I certainly hope so. Once again, another novella. There's a lot of novellas that I'm interested in, a lot of authors that I like put novellas out, and so this is also a strong novella list. But it says, follow the river List to the small town of Thistleford on the edge of Faerie and meet 2 sisters who cannot be separated, even in death. In the small town of Thistleford on the edge of Faerie dwells the mysterious Hawthorne family. There they tend and harvest the enchanted willows and honour an ancient compact to sing to them in thanks for their magic. None more devotedly than the family's latest daughters, Esther and Isabel, who cherish each other as much as they cherish the ancient trees. But when Esther rejects a forceful suitor in favour of a lover from the land of Faerie, not only the sisters' bond, but also their lives will be at risk. Seems like it's drawing from that Austen, Bronte vibe. Put it with fairies. I'm in. You won me. I'm going to read it. March 4th. Already read El-Mohtar, and so I have a confidence in the quality of the book. So that one I will be reading. Next up is one that will be very interesting, because I have read 2 books by this author. One I loved, the other fucking sucked. And that is Agustina Bazterrica, which I have read Tender as the Flesh. I think I gave it 4.5 stars. I really loved Tender as the Flesh. I thought it was brilliant. On the other hand of that, their short story collection, 19 Claws and a Blackbird or something. I hated that. I gave it 2 stars. I did not enjoy it at all. So, real polarity between my enjoyment of the author. And so the new book is The Unworthy, translated by Sarah Moses. and that is the long-awaited new novel from the author of global sensation Tender as the Flesh, a thrilling work of literary horror about a woman cloistered in a secretive, violent religious order, while outside the world has fallen into chaos. From her cell in a mysterious convent, a woman writes the story of her life in whatever she can find, discarded ink, dirt, or even her own blood. A lower member of the sacred sisterhood, deemed an unworthy, she dreams of ascending to the ranks of the enlightened at the centre of the convent, and of pleasing the foreboding superior sister. Outside, the world is plagued by catastrophe. Cities are submerged underwater, electricity and the internet are non-existent, and bands of survivors fight and forage in the cruel, barren landscape. Inside, the narrator is controlled, punished, but safe. But when a stranger makes her way past the convent walls, joining the ranks of the unworthy, she forces the narrator to consider her long-buried past, and what she may be overlooking about the enlightened. As the two women grow closer, the narrator is increasingly haunted by questions about her own past, the environmental future, and her present life inside the convent. How does she get to the sacred sisterhood? Why can't she remember her life before? And what really happens when a woman is chosen as one of the enlightened? A searing dystopian tale about climate crisis, ideological extremism, and the tidal pull of our most violent exploitative instincts. This is another unforgettable novel from a master of feminist horror. Yet, I mean, there's an interesting... I tend to be mixed on dystopian novels. Like, I get them, I understand them. They're not necessarily my favourite books or my favourite genre by any means. Now, of course, Tender as the Flesh I loved, and that's a dystopian. But a very different vibe. And this, to me, screams a lot of I Who Have Never Known Men. Gives that same kind of vibe of control and being incarcerated, essentially, and incarcerated for safety and that kind of thing. So it's one that I am interested in. I don't know whether I'll pick it up immediately, but it's definitely a book that I will read, because also depending on reviews, you know, if I don't get the like an arc and it comes out and it's getting trashed, I probably won't read it, but I am interested. And the final one, to close off the craziest day of the year, March 4th, is Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaghy, who wrote Migrations and Once There Were Wolves. I've read both of those. I did Migrations at university as well and did like an essay on it. And so Charlotte McConaghy's an author I really like. And this is a family on a remote island. A mysterious woman washed ashore, a rising storm on the horizon. Dominic Salt and his 3 children are caretakers of Shearwater, a tiny island not far from Antarctica, home to the world's largest seed bank. Shearwater was once full of researchers, but with sea levels rising, the Salts are now its final inhabitants, packing up the seeds before they are transported to safer ground. Despite the wild beauty of life here, isolation has taken its toll on the Salts. Raph, 18 and suffering his first heartbreak, can only find a relief at his punching bag. Fen, 17, has started spending her nights on the beach among the seals. 9-year-old Orley, obsessed with botany, fears the loss of his beloved natural world. And Dominic can't stop turning back toward the past and the loss that drove the family to Shearwater in the first place. Then, during the worst storm the island has ever seen, a woman washes up on shore. As the Salts nurse the woman, Rowan, back to life, their suspicion gives way to affection, and they finally begin to feel like a family again. Rowan, long accustomed to protecting her heart, begins to fall for the Salts too. But Rowan isn't telling the whole truth about why she set out for Shearwater. And when she discovers the sabotaged radios in a freshly dug grave, she realises Dominic is keeping his own dark secrets. As the storms on Shearwater gather force, the characters must decide if they can trust each other enough to protect the precious seeds in their care before it's too late, and if they can finally put the tragedies of the past behind them to create something new together. Very interesting. Thriller, mystery, bit of eco-fiction. We love to see it. Classic Charlotte McConaghy. Well, I had to take a break to hang out with some friends, so the lighting's changed, I've changed, everything's changed, the framing's probably changed. But an update during that time as well is that I have received confirmation that I have Love in Exile, the arc, so that's wonderful. Nice update during the video. Next up is book 2 in a series that came out last year. The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett was the first one, and A Drop of Corruption is book 2. And it doesn't have an exact release date from what I saw, so this is just a general thing. But book 1 was a solid fantasy mystery thriller kind of thing. It wasn't my favourite. I think I gave it a 3.5 or something, but it's got... Everyone seemed to love that book. It got rave reviews, massive sales, crazy. Like, I think it was his biggest book to date. And so that's always fun. And book two comes out. It's not on my priority by any means because I only kind of enjoyed book one. But if I get an answer for book two, I'll certainly read it. The book that held her heart is the third book in the Library trilogy by Mark Lawrence. So the book that burnt the world, the book that wouldn't burn, and the book that broke the world. Book three, the book that held her heart. I will be reading that when it becomes available because it's the finale to the trilogy. And I hope it finishes strongly. I enjoyed book one far more than book two, and so I hope that book three flies back up. Next up is very exciting, which is the book that held her heart is the 8th of April. April's also a stacked month, so that's got the Robert Jackson Bennett. It's got the Mark Lawrence book. Then it also has Vanishing World by Sayaka Murata, who, if anyone doesn't know because they're crazy, is the author of Convenient Store Woman, Earthlings, Life Ceremony, and now April 2025, Vanishing World, translated by Ginny Tapley Takamori. This one is... I actually have not read the synopsis for this book. I just saw that Sayaka Murata has a new book being translated, and I was like, okay, add it. So we'll experience this with me. In our near-future world, children are solely conceived by artificial insemination. Even sex between married couples is viewed as taboo. Amane's family is irregular. Her parents copulated to create her in hope that she too will find love and have a child with the person she marries. But Amane falls in line with society's way of thinking and wants a regular, clean marriage. Then she hears of a place that is the subject of a social experiment. Everyone in Paradise Eden will act as one big family. Could this be the perfect third way? Yeah, what a fucking classic Sayaka Murata. It's like, what about social expectations, gender, relationship values, and then we just go fucking crazy with it. I'm reading certain that Sayaka Murata put out. I still haven't read Life Ceremony though, so I do have a selection of short stories that I need to read first. Next up, April 24th, Judge of Worlds by Daniel Abraham comes out. That is the culmination of the Kithamar trilogy, so Age of Ash, Blade of Dream, and now Judge of Worlds. Looking forward to finishing it. It was originally meant to come out in December of like this year, I think, but it got delayed, I assume because of Wind and Truth and probably Mercy of Gods. But you know me, I love Daniel Abraham. I hope it stays at the level of Blade of Dream, and depending on how busy I am, I could be tempted to go for a reread of the whole trilogy. But we'll see, because like the first book came out I think in 2022, so it's been a while. Probably, I would say this is my biggest book of the year expectation, like the one I'm looking forward to most. Yeah, I would say so. Is The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. We're here for it. Moving beyond First Law, now that we've finished that, that is exciting. So, the synopsis for this is: holy work sometimes requires unholy deeds. Brother Diaz has been summoned to the sacred city, where he's certain a commendation and grand holy assignment waits him. But, with his new flock, is made up of unrepentant murderers, practitioners of ghastly magic, and outright monsters, and the mission he is tasked with will require bloody measures for them all in order to achieve its righteous ends. Elves lurk at our borders and hunger for our flesh, while greedy princes care for nothing but their own ambitions and comfort. With a hellish journey before him, it's a good thing Brother Diaz has the devils on his side. So, he's writing Suicide Squad, right? Anyone else get that? To me, that's like, oh, we're going to have Joe Abercrombie's version of Suicide Squad, which is going to be better. So I'm here for it. That is the 6th of May. Then the 27th of May, we have a new Guy Gavriel Kay book. This is not high on my list, purely because I've only read one Guy Gavriel Kay book. So I have a lot to catch up with. I have a Song for Arbonne here. I don't necessarily need this book by any means. And this is from the internationally best-selling author of Tagana, All the Seas of the World, and A Brightness Long Ago. I also have that as well. That's it. comes a majestic new novel of love and war that brilliantly evokes the drama and turbulence of medieval France, which you could genuinely just put a majestic new novel of love and war that brilliantly evokes the drama and turbulence of, and then just put in a different time frame, and eventually Guy Gavriel Kay will have a book that fits that. Turbulence of Regency England or turbulence of Shogun Japan, and it will eventually, all of those things will exist. After that is another one that I'm very excited for, The Emperor of Gladness by Ocean Vuong. Comes out 3rd of June. We all know I'm a big Ocean Vuong fan. I've read everything from Ocean Vuong. I've read On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. I've read Time is a Mother twice, and I've read Our Wounds, fucking Bullet. What the fuck is that called? Night Sky with Exit Wounds. My brain broke. But The Emperor of Gladness is his new novel, and that is Ocean Vuong returns with a big-hearted novel about chosen family, unexpected friendship, and the stories we tell ourselves in order to survive. One late summer evening in the post-industrial town of East Gladness, Connecticut, 19-year-old High stands on the edge of a bridge in pelting rain, ready to jump, when he hears someone shout across the river. The voice belongs to Grazina, an elderly widow succumbing to dementia who convinces him to take another path. Bereft and out of options, he quickly becomes her caretaker. Over the course of the year, the unlikely pair develop a life-altering bond, one built on empathy, spiritual reckoning, and heartbreak, with the power to alter High's relationship to himself, his family, and a community at the brink. Following the cycles of history, memory, and time, Emperor of Gladness shows the profound ways in which love, labour, and loneliness form the bedrock of American society. That's his life. At its heart is a brave epic about what it means to exist on the fringes of society and to reckon with the wounds that haunt our collective soul. Hallmarks of Vuong's writing, formal innovation, syntactic dexterity, and the ability to twin grit with grace through tenderness, are on full display in this story of loss, hope, and how far we would go to possess one of life's most fleeting mercies, a second chance. You know, I'll read anything Ocean Vuong puts out, and also sounds very different. Chosen family style. I'm here for it. It feels more like bittersweet, a bit more hopeful, rather than some of his other work. Then we have a word that I do not know how to pronounce, fitting with RF Kuang's other books, like Babel or Babel, whichever one you choose. Katabasis, I don't know how to pronounce it. All I know is Katabasis, noun, ancient Greek, the story of a hero's descent to the underworld. Two academic rivals from Cambridge must travel to hell to rescue the soul of their advisor. Getting there is easy. Surviving it and each other is another thing entirely. August 2025, 26th of August. RF Kuang is another auto-buy author. After Babel and Yellowface, I have still not read the Poppy War trilogy, but I will be reading this because she is one of the most exciting voices in literature. The sequel to the Silver Blood Promise? Yes. The sequel to The Silver Blood Promise comes out by James Logan on the 23rd of October, which I look forward to. I have not read the first book, so it's not high on my priorities, but maybe some point during the year I can read the first one to then be ready for the second one. There are actually two other books that fit that same criteria of I own the first book but haven't read it yet, and the second book's coming out. And that's that The Strength of the Few by James Islington, whatever, comes out at some point. It doesn't have a release date yet, but it seems like 2025 is the release date, and that is the sequel to The Will of the Many. The second Amina Al-Sirafi book looks to be coming out in 2025 as well, by Shannon Chakraborty. Once again, have not read that yet. So those three go together in that kind of need to read book one at some point before book two comes out. And then the final ones are books that we don't know the exact date for. One is The Last Contract of Akano by Fonda Lee, which anyone knows me, Greenbone Saga's on my best fantasy list, and so I read the synopsis for this and it sounded very interesting. The Last Contract of Isako, which is inspired by samurai movies and Fonda Lee's former business career. The Last Contract of Isako is a searing space opera like no other that takes aim squarely at late-stage capitalism. Get ready to meet an aging contractor, infamous Isako, whose final mission thrusts her deep into a world of espionage and sword fights on an isolated colony planet. This one now does have this says the 9th of October is the release date, so that's something I can change on here. And last but certainly not least is that at some point in 2025, Scott Lynch's novella, at least the first one novella, we're getting new Gentleman Bastards. That is crazy. I think inevitably we'll be getting it anyway because Grace and I together can justify it because we both love it. And we'll probably read it with Murphy and Bryce to continue the read along we were doing for the first 3 books. At least I hope that's the case. I haven't really spoken to them about it, but I'm going to tag them in this video, so we'll see what they say. But yeah, that's essentially it. Those are the books. How many was that? That is 20 books for 2025. I didn't even mean to make it 20 books because I just added the Scott Lynch at the start of the video. So that's mad. Now when you see 20 in the title and it looks real tidy, just be like, damn, they're going to war. But I hope you did enjoy. Please in the comments let me know what 2025 releases you're looking forward to and what 2025 releases you think I've missed. Because I probably have. There's a lot going around. It is rife out there with literature splendor. But yeah, I think I got most of the fantasy. But let me know if I'm missing any literary fiction or something. Something that you know that I'll vibe with, or like an author I've read that I'm just missing. But at the very least, that is my 20 there. I'm really looking forward to it. I've already got 2 arcs confirmed. So we're ready to make a start next year. If you did enjoy, please do like, please do subscribe. And as always, have a nice rest of your day.